Have you ever eaten something that had gone past its expiration date? Ugh. I mean, it was awful, wasn't it? And you probably immediately spat it out of your mouth. Well, things can feel just as awful when you stay in a job or any environment that's gone past its expiration date for you. It'll get your stomach in knots and feeling all kinds of sick. But why do we get into and stay in these past due date situations? Often it's because we don't know how to read the expiration date on a job or situation the way we can read it easily on the label of a bottle. Sound familiar? Maybe you're in it right now. In this episode, I want to help you get better at reading the signs, and specifically 3 signs that show you when you're in a job environment that's no longer for you. Hey, Creating Maven. I'm Joy Spencer, your Reframe specialist, with one important message. Your real work? It's not your job or your career. Your real work is what you create. And what you create is what sets you apart and makes you incomparable. It's your legacy. I'm here to show you a whole new way of working so you can create with your gifts, make a unique contribution, and finally get paid to be yourself. This is Reframe to Create. I don't know much about growing or taking care of plants. That is a gift my mother and older brother Aya seem to have. And growing up, my mom grew these beautiful roses, African violets, and all sorts of plants in our house. And it was a beautiful green haven. And I remember these plants were like royalty, and she grew them in these large round bottom clay pots that sat in wire-legged stands all around the porch. And nowadays, my brother Aya is showing that he's the one who's inherited this green thumb gene. So on our family weekly Zoom calls, we can see this green jungle invasion that has started all over his apartment. And he's always showing us the latest blooms. There are literally plants everywhere. I don't even know how he walks around in that place. We're all like simultaneously amused and also kind of amazed by what's happening here, because he literally just started this thing in 2020 during the COVID isolation months. I guess he, wanted something to create some company for himself. I don't know, but I don't know much about it. But I do know, and I'm pretty sure, that both my mom and my brother did something to make their plants not just survive, but thrive. And it was because of the nurturing environment that they're able to create. And yes, the seeds that make up those plants, whatever plants that they're using, already have everything within them to become what they need to become. But they won't do that, and they can't do that with the right amount of sunlight, water, and good soil. If they didn't have the right environment, they would soon shrivel up and die. We're all like these plants when it comes to our gifts. Our gifts are like seeds that have a world of potential and possibility in them for us to create beautiful things and experiences that we can offer in service. But like seeds, our gifts also need nurturing environments to help them thrive. If our gifts are neglected, abused, or put in hostile conditions, they're going to die on the vine of our souls and come to nothing. So you know what this means for you then, right? My creating maven? It means that creating with your gifts is not the only responsibility you have. You have to choose and stay in the right environments for those gifts to blossom and be available for service. This is also part of your responsibility because, unfortunately, for plants, they are completely at the mercy of their environment. They don't have legs, so they can't get up and move and be like, see ya, this isn't working for me. But guess what? You're not a plant. You've got legs, you can move. But moving isn't your problem, really, is it? You've moved before. You know how to do it. The real problem is knowing when it's the right time to move, because those are the expiration signs we often miss. And missing them leads us to staying longer or too long in any place that we're getting harmed. And sometimes we get harmed irreparably. There's something a former colleague and friend of mine, Delonte Eaton, always says, and it makes me think. He says, part of leaving is knowing when. Part of staying is knowing how. And if you can no longer figure out how to stay, then it's your when. And to me, once one or three of the signs I'm about to share are showing up in your job environment, then it's messing with how you can stay and showing you that you are at your point of when you need to walk out the door. As I was thinking about these signs, I asked my friend Sawita, who joined us in episode 34, Feeling Your Way to Your Next Job. I asked her what story came to mind when I brought up the examples. And she thought of Dreamgirls, another fabulous musical. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you are a genius. I tell you, people, musicals are the gifts that keep on giving. So for those of you who haven't seen it, Dreamgirls has two different versions, and I'm most familiar with the film adaptation version that came out in 2006. And so that's sort of what I'm thinking about when I talk about Dreamgirls. And that version stars Eddie Murphy, Beyonce, Jamie Foxx, Jennifer Hudson, Danny Glover, Anika Noni Rose, and many others. But Dreamgirls has a long history. It has its origins as a 4-year running Broadway musical that starred powerhouses like Jennifer Holliday, Cheryl Lee Ralph, Loretta Devine, and many others. And the Broadway version opened in 1981, and it got 13 Tony nominations and won 6 in its time. Like, it was an amazing Broadway show and had an amazing run. And at the time that the 2006 Dreamgirls film premiered, it was one of the most expensive all-Black cast movies to date with a $80 million production budget. I mean, I know that looks like chicken change now compared to the Black Panther's $200 million budget, but at the time it was groundbreaking. So this musical is beloved. I love it, and it's really done well, and you should definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. So the story itself spans 2 decades. It's set in Detroit in the 60s and 70s, and it follows these 3 teenage girls who are a powerhouse R&B music singing trio called the Dreamettes. And they eventually become the Dreams under the direction of their very manipulative and ambitious manager, Curtis Taylor Jr., who is played by Jamie Foxx. And he helps them to rise to fame, but not without making one of them a star over the others, pushing another one of them out of the group, and almost wrecking all of their relationships with each other. In this episode of Reframe to Create, the 3 fabulous women from Dreamgirls are going to join us and give us the help that we need in order to take a magnifying glass look at the environment of our jobs so that we can more accurately read the danger signs. Because our ultimate goal is to always be in the best space that will help us to make our unique contribution as we create with our gifts. And even if your job is not the perfect place for it, meaning that you still have to seek out opportunities outside of it to live out your gifts, you don't want to be in a place that is toxic to your gifts. That won't do. So let's do it. Let's get into these 3 signs that show you when you're in the wrong environment for the flourishing of your gifts. 1, it's neglectful towards your gifts. This was the experience of the Laurel character in Dreamgirls, which was played by Anika Noni Rose. Now, when you think about neglectful and what her character went through, it's like she was the 3rd character. In many ways, she was the 3rd wheel. She was a great singer, but she was mostly dismissed or ignored. She was always sort of like off to the side and had to sort of, sing and, bring herself forward, but she didn't really do that or insert herself a lot. So for the most part, her character was sort of like the dismissed and ignored one. And even in her relationship with the Jimmy Early character, she was his mistress for 8 years. She was in the background of his life, never playing front and center for 8 years. So she is the perfect example of someone whose gifts were neglected because she was an amazing singer. She was essentially invisible. And so when you think about this for yourself, this is when you're in an environment where what you have to offer is dismissed out of hand. It's flat out ignored. It doesn't register on anyone's radar as being of value. It's like your gift is invisible. It just doesn't matter. It just doesn't register. It's just not even there. And you might think, okay, well, maybe this is not that bad of a thing. Like, I'm neglected or my gift is neglected. How bad is that? Like, well, think about plants. Like, if you just leave your plant in your house alone and you neglect it, what would happen to it? Without any water, without any sunlight, without you taking care of the soil, it wouldn't just be fine. It would be fine maybe for a little bit, but it would eventually shrivel up and die. You need some care and nurturing towards your gift. You can't be in an environment where it's completely dismissed, ignored, and just invisible. So that's one sign. That's the first sign. It's neglectful towards your gift. 2, it misuses your gifts. So this is represented by the Dina character in Dreamgirls. And Dina is played by Beyonce. And the thing about the Dina character is she eventually becomes the breakout star of the show. She is put forward, but really she is really probably the most manipulated character in the show. Curtis just uses her. And later on he says, you know why I picked you? It's because your voice has no character. It has no depth except what I put in it. And she had her own voice. She had her own gift, but she was being misused and used to disenfranchise the Effie character. She was like a tool in Curtis's toolbox to have his own rise to fame and do whatever it is that he wanted. So he saw value in her voice, enough value to think, ooh, I can use this, but not enough value to support her in having her own career and having her own voice. And when you're in an environment that does this, it can be so crushing, right? They see the value of what you have to offer, but there's an inconsistency to how they approach you. It's always about how they can use it. And, maybe there's some square, pegs being put into round holes. And it just leaves you confused about what is going on here. And you know what you have to offer and what it needs in order to do well. And maybe even some of the places and spaces that it should not be in because of your values. But they don't care. Your gift is a tool that they can use to leverage and manipulate. And you know how awful and wrong this can feel. And so you might be the Dina character and your gifts might be treated as the Dina character in this part where you're being misused. So that's the second sign. Your gift is being misused and in many ways abused. And the third sign is they are outright hostile towards your gifts. And this we can see in the Effie character by Jennifer Hudson. Effie was a powerhouse, unique voice, and she knew it. She knew that she was amazing. She was the original lead for the band, and she got pounded and hounded. She got pushed to the back. She got taken down many pegs by the Curtis character, and he was out and right hostile towards her and towards her gifts because she was not easy to manipulate. She was not easy to control. Her gift was not valued at all. He was just hostile towards it because he just could not control it. And you might have had this experience or maybe experiencing this now. The gifts, the things that you have to offer because of your sense of ownership and agency around it, there's outright hostility towards you and your gift. They're making it a hostile environment and a space where it just makes it impossible to show up with that gift. And so what can you do in that situation, right? Because it's going to just choke out and crowd out any ability for you to really make a contribution and enjoy what contribution you're making. So those are the three signs as evidenced by the three characters. 1, they're neglectful, the way that Curtis was towards the Laurel character's gift. Or 2, they misuse and abuse your gift, the way that he was towards the Dina character. Or they are out and right hostile towards your gifts, the way that Curtis was towards the Effie character and her amazing powerhouse voice. You're in an environment that's neglectful, that misuses your gifts, or is out and right hostile towards your gifts. And that won't do. So those are the three signs that you are in an environment that is wrong for your gifts. So if this is the wrong environment, what is the right environment? Well, it's the complete opposite. 1, they are attentive to your gifts. You're in a place that does not ignore your gifts, but they see it. They see it. They see that it's valuable. It's visible to them, and they pay attention. And that is what the Laurel character did not get. She just was not seen. She was so invisible. But when you're in the right place, your gifts will be seen. And 2, there will be a consistent investment in your gifts that shows that they know how to rightly handle it and appreciate it. So you won't feel misused and abused like the Dina character. There will be investment. There will be opening of doors, creating of spaces, improving the environment, seeing what value you have to offer so that you can do and bring more and more of it. And 3, it'll be an affirming environment, an environment that affirms your gifts, that's open and proactive in its recognition, not hostile the way that Curtis was to Effie and pushing you to the back, but there will be an open embrace. The right environment will be attentive, consistently investing in your gifts and affirming towards your gifts. So now we know what will not work for us, right? We know the signs of an environment that is hostile and maybe showing us that this is just not going to work for us anymore. And maybe it's time to start looking and getting out and going somewhere else. At this point, you're probably thinking, okay, it's my when. How do I get out of here? Not so fast, my creating maven. That's what we're going to talk about in the next episode. But for now, I just want you to really be sure that this is your when. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to take stock. Take stock of your environment and ask yourself these 3 questions on a scale of 1 to 10. 1, how neglectful is my environment towards my gifts right now? 1 being, it's not neglectful at all. In fact, they are extremely attentive to my gifts and my gifts are visible and front and center. All the way up to 10, which is they are extremely neglectful. I'm like Laurel in Dreamgirls, whose gifts are completely invisible and unacknowledged. They don't even know that I have gifts, much less what they could be. Where do things stand for you? And 2, on a scale of 1 to 10, how misused is my gift in my working environment? 1, I'm not misused at all. They accurately place and use my gifts in the right places. All the way up to 10, I am completely misused and sometimes abused. My gifts are like a square peg in a round hole most days. I feel like Dina, who is being used as a tool to serve the agenda of some other thing, but they don't see what I have to offer. So 1, not misused at all the way up to 10, completely misused and sometimes abused. And 3, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hostile is my environment towards my gifts right now? With 1 being, it's not hostile at all. In fact, it's very affirming. They've even given me recognition and awards. All the way up to 10, it is downright World War III up in here. I am Effie being kicked out of the group, being told that who I am and what I have to offer is a problem. They don't want what I have to offer. So 1, it's not hostile at all. It's actually very affirming. And 10, it is hostile and World War III. I want you to just think about it. And if any of these are a 6 or more for you, maybe it's your when. Maybe it's time to just think a little bit more about that. Think about the environment. And is it something that is changeable, fixable in any sort of way? And if it's not, maybe this is your when. I don't want you to do anything about it. I don't want you to think, okay, well, how do I get out if it's my when? But sometimes the first step is just acknowledging and sitting in your realization about what reality is. And it can hurt. And it can be surprising. Maybe it'll be surprising in a good way for you. You'll find out that you're actually in a very attentive, investing, and affirming place. But don't run away from this. Have the courage to just look reality in the face and sit with it. Because when and knowing when is more than half the battle. In the next episode, we're going to look at how. If you have discovered that this is your when, how do you get out of this environment and on to something else? There are specific things to do and look for in order to make sure that you don't get back into the same thing, that you don't sort of jump out of the frying pan into the fire. And that's what we're going to look at in our next episode. But for now, let's see if this is truly your when. Think through those 3 questions and send me an email at joy@reframetocreate.com and let me know, what are the results? What's coming up for you? I'm here to support you. I'm here to help you on this journey to becoming the best creating maven that you could possibly be. See you soon, Creating Maven. Until then, remember to always ask yourself, what will I create?